good morning, and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. Now, this morning we are chatting with Haran Ramkaransingh. I hope I got that correct. Who is the Director of Legal Services at the Equal Opportunities Commission. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you this morning?
I am great. I am great. And how are you doing?
Everything is well, thank you.
So, tell us a bit about what's happening at the Equal Opportunities Commission.
Okay. Well, the Equal Opportunity Commission is a public body that was created by an act of parliament, the Equal Opportunity Act. This act was passed to prohibit certain kinds of discrimination and to create an avenue by which persons who have been subjected to that kind of discrimination can get redress. That is to say, it prohibits discrimination in four broad areas: in employment, in education, in the provision of goods and services, and in the provision of accommodation. But this discrimination, sorry, must be tied to what are called status grounds. And these are certain personal and inherent characteristics that all of us possess. The status grounds that are protected are race, ethnicity, religion, sex, marital status, origin, and disability. So the thinking behind the act is that your employer, for example, should not treat with you because of your race or your religion or your sex. These are things that your employer should not decide whether they're hiring you on these bases. They should not they should not use things like race and sex and religion and origin in deciding whether to hire you, whether to promote you, whether to give you some benefit like send you on some training or some promotion, or even to terminate you. So if you have been, I mean, if you believe that this has happened to you, then you can lodge a complaint with the commission. And our mandate is to receive and investigate these complaints. Um, and where possible, we try to conciliate the complaints. That is to say, we bring the parties to the table to have a conversation to see whether it could be resolved. If it cannot be resolved, the Equal Opportunity Act created a second institution, and that is the Equal Opportunity Tribunal. And they are a court. They are separate from the commission. Now, when you bring a complaint to the commission, you can just walk in, or you can go to our website and lodge a complaint. And specifically for persons who live in Tobago, on the third Friday of every month, you can go to the Division of Health and Wellness. Our staff comes in on that day. So while you can lodge your complaint online, sometimes if you want to speak to somebody, you can come and you can even lodge your complaint there. But yes, to come in, you just simply need to, like I said, click online or come in. And to pursue your complaint with us, for example, you don't need the services of an attorney. However, when you go to the Equal Opportunity Tribunal, that is like going to a court. Like, say you go to the High Court or the Magistrates Court, the courts on Baccalaureate Street there. And for that, you would need an attorney, and there are lots of court processes. You have to file your documents, your submissions, your evidence, your arguments, all of these sorts of things. So that is the commission in a nutshell, and that's who we are, and that's what we do.
Excellent. And a lot of persons, when they find themselves in conflicts, maybe with their superiors at work, might say, well, I feel discriminated against. How can we differentiate simple professional conflicts from actual discrimination? How do we define discrimination?
Well, part of the essence of discrimination is really unequal treatment. So, for example, a good example would be if other people were promoted at work, but you weren't, then that perhaps, I'm not saying that is conclusive evidence, but that's something we would look at to say, well, were you discriminated against? If, for example, the employer didn't promote anybody, it would be a bit more difficult to say. Again, each case has to be decided on its own facts. I remember a number of years ago, we got a matter from someone who complained that they weren't sent on training. They were part of a department, a human resource department in a public sector agency. And they said over the course of a few years, everyone from that department was sent on a certain kind of training, a specific type. And she felt that her turn was next, and she was not sent. Now, if the organization had said that, for example, we've cut our training budget, and unfortunately we can't, while we recognize this has happened, we can't do it. We just simply can't afford it anymore for this year. Then perhaps that may not be a case of discrimination. But when we did our investigation, because remember, part of our mandate is to investigate complaints, we asked, well, could you tell us give us a list of everybody in the organization who's been sent on training over the last 2 years? I'm speaking about a foreign training. And they gave us a list of people being sent to all sorts of places, to Norway and to Texas and to all of these sorts of things. So that using that as an example, it was difficult to say, like I said, if the organization had said we're just cutting training altogether, we can't afford to do it, then that's perhaps not discrimination. But if you feel that all of these people are getting this benefit and you are being deprived of some benefit, then sometimes that in itself could be evidence of discrimination.
Excellent. And how does a person differentiate being discriminated against as opposed to being victimized in some sort?
Well, there's a separate category of complaint under the Equal Opportunity Act known as victimization. And victimization really applies, doesn't stick up here. We get a lot of complaints from people who feel that they were victimized in the ordinary sense of the word. And that is to say, if you were to just apply the dictionary definition of what is victimization, victimization in the dictionary sense refers to where someone has some power or authority or privilege over you, and they treat you in an adverse or malicious manner, and thus you see yourself as a victim. However, victimization under the Equal Opportunity Act, for our purposes, is a bit more narrow and a bit more specific. It has to be that you did certain things initially. For example, you lodged a complaint with the commission, or you indicated that you intend to lodge a complaint with the commission, or you gave evidence. Let's say your coworker lodged a complaint, but you are giving evidence in favor of your coworker, or you have indicated that you're going to give evidence in favor of your coworker, or even sometimes it could just be a matter of raising allegations of inequality of treatment and discrimination in the workplace. So you do one of these specific things, and consequent upon that, then you suffer some adverse or detrimental treatment. So, for example, consequent upon that, you see that you're not being promoted, or we could go back to the same examples I just gave. You're not being promoted, or you were denied some benefit or some training or some facility or something like that, or even if you were terminated, then you can complain about victimization there. So that is how victimization applies under the Equal Opportunity Act.
Excellent. And you said that persons can come to the Division of Health on the fourth floor and lodge their complaint. What is the process like for lodging a complaint? Is it that they have to first gather all the evidence and then bring it to you, or would you help them understand what type of evidence is needed in their case?
Well, the ideal situation is the first situation where a person gathers everything and comes, because that way your matter can proceed a lot quicker. But it is not necessary, no. If a person just wants to come and talk to us, they can talk. They can lodge a complaint right there and then, and our staff will, as you said, will guide them as to what evidence they need, what they can bring in. Again, now we have the power to request information from a respondent. So let's say you're complaining about your employer, because there might be certain things that you can't access. You may not be able to access a lot of confidential files and records and that sort of thing. But at the same time, it would expedite your matter. The more information you can bring, obviously, your matter will move a lot faster. But it is not necessary that happens. We can guide you, we can assist you, we can point out to you that maybe you can try something. If it's a public sector employer, we could sometimes say, well, you could make a request under the Freedom of Information Act. So we can help you. And at the same time, sometimes we might ask you the questions, because if you're saying that I was not sent, again, let's go back to that example of the lady who said she wasn't sent on training. Then we would sit down and ask her, well, who do you know who was sent on training? And think about this department, and think about that department. And maybe you can go back and just subtly ask around. So even though we investigated and we got the information, it would help if you can do some digging around on your own. But it's not necessary that you do that.
Okay, understood. And so when it comes to these proceedings, do you suggest that persons refrain from trying to have that direct dialogue with their employer on their own and just wait until the situation is resolved, whether it be through mediation or through the tribunal?
Well, our mandate is to try and resolve matters, and sometimes, if it's possible that the matter could be resolved between the parties, we would always encourage that, because there's no benefit if you can get a resolution tomorrow that is acceptable to you. There's no need or no greater benefit to say let the process go on for the next few months. So it is always possible, but we do try it. If it is you want to have this conversation, we would prefer that you let us know first, as opposed to having us do an investigation, and then sometimes you never know. Sometimes the employer went right back to us and say, well, we're having a conversation with the person. It doesn't really augur well for your matter if we're taken by surprise, Because if it is you want to have a conversation with your employer, then we can sometimes it might be beneficial for us to tell the employer, we are holding up on our process so that to allow you all to have a conversation. Because let's just say the employer gets an attorney, the attorney might quite correctly so advise that the employer should not be discussing the matter with the employee while the process is ongoing before the commission. So it may be to your benefit if you want to have that conversation with your employer to let us know, and then we can tell the employer, well, we are, we're holding up on our process. We'll put it on hold for now to allow this conversation to happen.
Right. And how often are these matters amicably resolved?
Well, there's a formal process of conciliation, and for that, for example, we have a person employed who is a mediator licensed with the Mediation Board of Trinidad and Tobago, and she will hold conciliation sessions using the principles and practices of mediation. But then there is the informal resolution that we get in many matters. Sometimes, for example, matters are resolved just at the stage of investigation, because many times a lot of the complaints we have really have to do with what is called information asymmetry. That asymmetry meaning symmetry is where both sides are identical, but asymmetry means that one side is not identical to the other, and information asymmetry simply means that one side has more information than the other. So many times, and many persons who are employees can talk about this. So sometimes you get together in a group and you say, well, I don't know what management is doing. They're not communicating with us. They're not telling us what is the plan, what is the keepback, what is the holdup. And sometimes only through the investigation process that we might get a response from the employer, and the employee or the person might say, well, okay, I have a better understanding of what took place now. I feel I feel more comfortable with the situation, even so that even though there wasn't a formal resolution in the sense that the parties they shook hands and reached an agreement. Because at a conciliation session, there's a formal resolution. That's basically where, to use the expression, you shake hands, you reach an agreement, you sign a document saying, I agree to do this, I agree to do that. But sometimes coming out of the investigation, there isn't this formal agreement, but there's a sense of better understand. The person has a better understanding of what took place. Maybe has a better sense of peace of mind. So in that sense, yes, there is I would say a significant element of resolution.
Excellent. And so we are going to take a quick break right here, and we're going to be back as we continue this conversation very soon. See you soon, guys.
Okay. Yes. Thanks.
The energy fill the skies. Good morning, and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. Now, I have been chatting with Haran Ramkaransingh, who is the Director of Legal Services at the Equal Opportunities Commission. And this morning we have been chatting about functions of the Equal Opportunity Commission, how you can get connected with them at the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection. They're at the 4th floor on Thursdays. And if you have a complaint, you can go there and lodge it. And they will tell you if you have a viable complaint. One of the questions that I've seen coming in is, what are some of the most common complaints that often come into the commission?
Well, the most common complaints are discrimination in the field of employment. Although we're empowered to receive complaints in four areas: employment, education, the provision of goods and services, and the provision of accommodation. Statistically, every year, over 80% of our complaints are in the field of employment. We always get complaints, for example, most of the complaints have to do with things happening on the job. Whether or not somebody was not promoted. We get a lot of complaints about, for example, non-promotion. Or some other benefit or facility. So that's why I always stick to non-promotion. That's the main thing. We do get a lot of complaints about persons who said that some detriment happened to them. They suffered some loss of income because of some situation, or they receive some warning letter or some disciplinary letter. So it's always those sort of things. It's always employment related things that are going on between the employer and the employee.
All right. And a lot of persons did not know that when it comes to their rental agreement with their landlord or even as a landlord, you can go to the Equal Opportunities Commission to maybe help with some of those disputes. Tell us about that.
Well, yes. For example, if you're well, you can lodge a complaint with us. For example, if you believe your landlord is discriminating against you, but again, the discrimination has to be tied to certain grounds, certain status characteristics, your race, your ethnicity, your religion, your disability, that sort of thing. For example, we did get a complaint from someone who said that most of the complaints with landlord and tenant matters have to do really with non-rental, because to be fair, if it is that there's a dispute between a landlord and tenant as opposed with respect to, say, repairing the property, that may not necessarily be an equal opportunity commission matter, um, or payment of rent or those sorts of things, because there are other mechanisms by which, let's just say, for example, the tenant is not paying the rent. Then there are mechanisms, there are legal recourses that the landlord has in other places, and in the magistrate's court, they can pursue what is called a summary ejectment matter. So, but most of the complaints we get with landlord and tenant matters have to do with non-rental, where somebody says that I went to look at a place and I didn't get through, but I heard that somebody else got through. You know, that's the bulk of the complaints we get there.
Okay, and to avoid persons calling discrimination when it is not a discrimination case, how do you set forward clear guidelines to guide individuals on when they can indeed come to you to lodge a discrimination claim?
Well, to begin with, we generally tend to encourage anyone who wants assistance in the matter, because, as we said, if you come and speak to us, we can perhaps guide you and may perhaps tell you that this is perhaps not a matter that you can lodge with us. But for example, if you want to do some reading on your own, we have published guidelines that are available on our website for free download. Our website is www.equalopportunity.com gov.tt. Sorry, people always say equal opportunities. They tend to pluralize us. No, we are the Equal Opportunity Commission, not opportunity. So similarly, our website is www.equalopportunity.gov.tt. You can go to our website and you can find, for example, guidelines for employers on discrimination. We have guidelines for employers. So that's the general guidelines, discrimination. But then we have specific guidelines for employers on disability, because do remember, one of our mandates is to deal with discrimination on the basis of disability. So we have specific guidelines for that. And then we have guidelines for employers on sexual harassment. The sexual harassment is recognized as a form of sex-based discrimination. So that there was actually a judgment of the Court of Appeal that confirmed this. So that if you have suffered sexual harassment in the workplace, for example, you can lodge a complaint with us. But the guidelines, just to stick up in the guidelines of sexual harassment, really, for example, hope to take a more proactive approach in that we perhaps provide assistance on how to write a sexual harassment policy, things like that. If a complaint of sexual harassment is made to you as an employer, what should you do? So ideally, if one were to follow the guidelines that we have published, then this would then there'll be very little work to come to us, because hopefully employers would follow the guidelines and would know what are the best practices and what to do.
Understood. And moving forward, again, persons can come to you on Thursdays at the fourth floor of the Division of Health, Wellness, and Social Protection.
Sorry, it's Fridays, not Thursdays.
Sorry,
It's
on
the third Friday,
Fridays.
yes, the third Friday of every month. The third
The,
Friday of every month, they can come and visit us. So
all
as a
right.
matter of fact, I think we will be there. I don't know if we'll be there tomorrow or next week. I need to confirm which is the third Friday. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but I think we'll be there tomorrow. Yes. Mhm.
All right. And when it comes to issues of persons with disabilities,
Mhm.
can a person lodge a complaint for instance, not having adequate restroom facilities that allow for them to perhaps go in with a wheelchair? Is that something that the Equal Opportunities Commission would assist them with?
Yes, you can lodge a complaint, because the employer, Trinidad and Tobago, signed in 2002 the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the CRPD. And so both documents, both the Equal Opportunity Act and the United Nations Convention, places a number of obligations on the government to do things, or to put, not as a government, but it places obligations on the state rather. And this includes not just the government per se, but employers. So that, for example, employers have to make what is called reasonable accommodation for persons to accommodate persons with disabilities. Now, the accommodation must be reasonable in that it must not necessarily impose a disproportionate or undue financial burden on the employer. And to this, for example, we recognize that many old buildings, many old colonial buildings, it may be difficult sometimes to say, well, we're going to retrofit the part of it. But at the very least, a lot of new buildings that are, but it's not a one size fits all, because, for example, let's just use the example of the bathroom. The employer would need to, if the person with a disability can lodge a complaint with us and we can investigate with the employer. Now, the employer would have to say or show that it is financially unfeasible for them to perhaps do over the bathrooms to accommodate this person with a disability. Now, if it simply means just fixing the door, expanding the door, or something like that, it would be difficult to say, well, I can't afford to put in a new door and put in grab bars and these little sort of things that would accommodate the person with a disability. But if it's an old building and the bathrooms, for example, are little stalls built with brick and mortar and concrete, I'm not saying it's impossible at all. It's certainly not impossible. Any construction work can be done. Any retrofitting can be done. But it's just a question of the employer saying it's just not financially feasible for me. I always like to use the example. Let us say the employer is one of those nice large commercial banks, or like those big hotels in Tobago. It will be difficult to say that. But let's just say your employer is really some one of those small little thrift stores, as I call it, or little clothes stores on the side of the road. It may, they may be able to reasonably say it's not physically feasible or it's not financially feasible for me to do this work. So it's not a one size fits all.
Understood. And even as we round up our discussion this morning, can you tell individuals why it's important to visit your website and check out the information and understand what their rights are?
Well, it's important so that you can be informed, and you can be informed in terms of, let's just say, I always like to use, we do a lot of public education where we go into businesses and we go into organizations. So that's a service that we offer if anybody, it's free of charge. And we always say that, for example, you are an employer, so that you have obligations, but you also provide of goods and services. If it is, even if you're a public sector agency, let us say, I'm just using an example, you're a division of the THA, but you provide goods and services to the public or a section of the public, whatever those services may be. So that you could be facing a complaint of discrimination, not just from your employees, but from the public or the section of the public that you serve. Somebody says that I was denied access to these goods and services because of my disability, for example. That could be a complaint that. So it's not just the employee who can complain that I'm just making up an example. It's just not just the employee that can complain. Well, the division office doesn't have a bathroom to accommodate a person who uses a wheelchair, but a member of the public who comes in and says, well, I need to use a bathroom, I need to use these facilities, and then there is no bathroom or restroom to accommodate the person with a wheelchair, they can lodge a complaint as well. So it is something that you should be aware of in terms of what are your obligations and what you can do, and also to help other persons, because many times a lot of complaints we get, one of the boxes on our form, we just ask for statistical purposes, how did you become aware of the commission? And many persons say word of mouth or references that I was speaking to somebody, I was speaking to my uncle or to my aunt or to a friend or somebody about a problem I'm having, and they recommended, well, why don't you go to the Equal Opportunity Commission? So that you are better informed. When you are better informed, you know what to do, and you could also provide guidance to other people who may be in a situation that that requires so much assistance.
Okay, understood. Again, it's important for persons to visit the website. It's important for them to also spread the information. But what really does come out of a successful complaint? Is it that persons end up suing the organization, or the commission just intervenes to ensure that the organization makes the requisite changes?
Well, at the level of conciliation, I just need to draw a distinction between a successful complaint at the commission's level and at the level of the tribunal. The remedy commission simply conciliates the matter. We don't adjudicate. People used to ask us in the past, well, how much money have we awarded to persons, or how much money have we given out, or that sort of thing. And we said, no, we are not a court. The tribunal is the court, so we cannot compel the employer to do anything. We can bring, like I said, we can bring the parties to the table to perhaps reach an agreement. Agreements we've had, for example, and it's up to it's really up to the parties whatever they want to agree to. For example, I remember there was one agreement where the person said, "I want my employer to put in policies and programs to prevent this thing from happening in the future." That was part of the conciliation agreement. It could be anything. I mean, it could be sometimes. I mean, the parties agree to the payment of money. Sometimes they agree to a promotion. Again, it's whatever you can shake hands and agree on. That would be something that would be a successful outcome there. At the tribunal, however, when you go to the tribunal, like I said, that is the same as taking a matter before a court. And more often than not, a court, more often than not, the court will simply, if you are successful, they will order some form of financial compensation. They have the power to make orders and declarations and order compensation. So it's really, but the practice of courts really is simply to, just make a financial award as the case may be.
Excellent. All right. Well, we want to thank you so much for your time this morning. We want to thank you for coming on and truly educating the public on how they can utilize the Equal Opportunity Commission and to open their eyes and ears for the third Friday in the month when you are at the fourth floor at the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection. That's up at Glen Road, Montessori Drive, right in that vicinity where community development is there, along with the Division of Settlements. You cannot miss it. Now, go to their website and assess whether or not your situation fits under discrimination or victimization. You can also give them a call and get some clarity on whether or not you should come in and get more guidance on lodging that complaint. So again, Mr. Ramkaransingh, I want to thank you so much for coming on this morning. Thank you for you and your team and all the work that you are doing in Tobago. And again, we want to say thank you. Guys, we want to thank you for being a part of the discussion this morning. Thank you for your likes, your shares, and your comments, and all that you have been doing to make Tobago Updates the #1 broadcaster here on the island of Tobago. Now, this morning we had a chat with Miss Kay Trotman, who is the PRO of the IDA, and they are having Dine, Wine, and Dance on the 30th of November at 7 p.m. at that place down in Crown Point Vibes space where that used to be the Shade nightclub. Now they are having that event, and you have the ability to get a ticket at the IDA office or give them a call and be a part of the initiative. And when it comes to equal opportunities, you can reach out to the Equal Opportunity Commission by going to their website and taking a browse through and see if your situation fits the mold. That would make you a great candidate for lodging a complaint, going before a tribunal, and possibly getting compensated. So guys, I want to thank you again. Have a great day, and see you soon.